Hi guys, welcome to another session, another review session for lesson number 7. This is the second part. We did cover some of the aspects I think 2 days ago. So I hope you guys got a chance to join in, or if not, go through the replay of that stream. I hope you guys are doing healthy. I hope you guys are healthy, hydrated, productive, and happy. And I'm so glad you guys could join us today. I will limit today's session to about an hour um, from a time perspective. Other than that, I plan to cover the rest of session number 7. Hopefully, the sales growth part as well as the financial part. But let's see how that goes and how much we can achieve. If like a very little portion of it is left beyond that and beyond an hour, I'll try to finish it as much as possible. So the next session we do have is purely lesson number 8, which seems to be a lot more problematic because the way it is explained is not that clear. So I hope I can help you guys with that by going through an actual example, uh, not at the speed that the videos are recorded at and stuff like that, and be more clear about certain things like ramp ups and stuff like that. Anyways, let's give you guys some time to trickle in. Whenever you come in, say hi in the chat. Sorry, whenever you come in, tell us where you're from. Say hi in the chat, tell us where you're from. And also, if you have any particular questions related to the lesson, any quizzes or any exercises that you're having trouble with, you're struggling with, then let me know and we can go through those particular exercises for sure. If they're not from lesson 7 and if they are from lesson 8, highlight that in the chat and tag me so I know when I do the lesson 8 session, I know which things to make sure I cover. And also, if they're from the previous lessons, you might want to go check out the streams for those previous lessons 3 to 6. There are 2 parts. So if that's the case, check that. If you still don't get it over there, then put it in the Slack and I can cover that either on Slack or in the next stream. Okay, with that, let's see. Let me open up the coursework. Also, let us know if you have completed the coursework ahead of the assessment, or like, is it a revision, a review thing for you, or is it something that you're still stuck on and you still need to complete that? Let us know. So we'll be starting from concept 18, sales metrics. That's where we ended last time. Let me see if you guys can see my screen, what I can show you. Okay. Okay. So let's start with this. Okay. Let me set the timer so we know when our time's up. It's 10:16 my time. For those of you who are joining as a regular stream, I will be having my regular stream after this one, after a break. But this is just like a live review session, so there will be no Pomodoro technique or anything. So if you want to mute and work with us, that's fine too. If it's too distracting, then sorry about that, but we will be seeing you in our regular Pomodoro stream soon, later today. Just thought I'd let you know, since I know some of you are here. Well, I just wanted to say hi to Samir. Thank you for joining. Okay, so that's set. Let's head in. So we wanted to start with the sales metric. Last time we did the marketing funnel where we saw the reach to the potential target market, and then impressions, and then click-throughs, and then lead generation, and then customer acquisition, and so on and so forth. That was the marketing funnel. So you reach a lot of people, you make like impressions are who actually searches, who actually gets to see those ads and campaigns. People who click through and come to your website, they become potential leads, but then when they engage with the product, they actually become leads, and then they purchase the product and they get converted into a paying customer. And a paying customer then either comes back to make more purchases, and also they bring their friends and family and stuff like that. Okay, let me open the chat in another window, so in case some of you... Okay. Let me put it down here. That will be easy for me to see. Okay, heading. Okay, let's go. Sales metric. B2C is basically a business sells directly to consumers, and B2B is business sells directly to other businesses. Business to consumer would be any retail where any store that the customer goes and who's the user of the product is basically, individual customers. But B2B could be like a software development, a software subscription for, let's say, manufacturing concern. So a company who's developing that software is a business, and it's catering to other businesses in terms of giving them the software for a manufacturing concern. Whereas the same industry, B2C example would be a business in the software development space, but they are giving subscriptions to, let's say, individual customers like Office 365, for example. Actually, Office 365 can actually be both, since they have enterprise customers, which is B2B, and individual home, Microsoft Office Home, or personal or professional for individual people, that would be B2C. Why does it matter? Because usually when you sell it to one person, the ticket size of that sale for the same company, like for example Microsoft Office, right? Most of us use it in any shape or form, and then if you have a direct subscription, as an individual person, you would be, the ticket size of that particular one product, one subscription per month would be X amount of dollars, right? 13 to 15 to 20, whatever. If you are selling to the business, you would actually have a different package of the same product. The product doesn't change, but the way you sell it would be different to an organization, where you say, okay, we'll give you 50 users, and there will be a lump sum. There'll be a difference in maybe, customer support, customization of their, let's say, organizational branding on their office and stuff like that. So the product, the underlying product is the same. You could change some services, But the way you bundle all of that may be very different when you are catering to individuals like a consumer versus a business like any enterprise. Okay, sales pipeline. Sales pipeline starts with prospects. Prospects are the potential, um, prospects is like everybody you think might be relevant. So, prospect for Microsoft Office B2C would be any computer user for that matter, right? And then the leads would be people who would be, so if you were to think in terms of marketing funnel, your reach and impressions would be the prospect aspect of it over here. Then they convert into leads by clicking through your, or changing, converting your prospects into leads is to reach out to them in some way or form, like cold email marketing. Then those leads will become qualified leads when you shortlist them and to see whether they are interested or not. And then qualified leads convert into conversions or bookings, which is actually paid customers. So you would prospect out to see who is your target market for that particular sale, which is where your impressions and reach from the marketing funnel comes in, and then converting them into leads, potential people who did engage somehow, like click through your ad, or opened your email, your cold email, or something like that, or you know searched for your particular product, for example, or pricing or anything like that. And then you have qualified leads where you um, you actually narrow it down as to how relevant is your product to them. For example, I make a sales call to somebody for a particular software product. So I would first prospect out as to how many people I have to reach out, and I do reach out to people on LinkedIn, for example, and one person replies and says, "Okay, I'll take your call." So that person changes from a prospect to a lead. Then, when I talk to them and I understand what kind of needs they have and whether this software that I'm trying to sell to them, is it relevant to them, and um, how inclined are they to make a purchase or use this product, that then I will classify those leads into qualified leads, in the sense that I know that this person would be interested in purchasing the subscription or whatever I'm selling. That becomes a qualified lead. And then my so qualified leads are like more zoned in, so that these people are way more interested in getting them on board, like as a customer would be a lot more easier because it interests them, and you have done some kind of diligence might not be the right word, but you've done they've shown way more interest than other people who just responded yes or clicked through an ad. They've done more work in the sense that you've assessed they have a greater interest and are more likely to buy. So it's just like a phase of narrowing it down. Closing the deals would be actually, the conversion would actually be taking that prospect, that qualified lead, and converting into a paid sale, which is called a booking basically. And that's when you convert a customer. So the total bookings, is actually how much did you end up selling. It's important to have two factors in here: the number of bookings versus the ticket size of the booking, as to how big a booking is. A company may be selling 1 million bookings for $10, so that would be 10 million in total bookings. But a company might only be doing 500,000 in $50 bookings, or 500,000 in $20 bookings. They would still end up with total bookings. So it really depends on how many number of orders or the number of bookings you have, and what is the booking size. Some industries or some companies work on small ticket items, but high volume. Some companies work on more, like in the luxury industry, they work on high ticket items but lower volume. And then another thing could be bookings could be on an annual basis, like a subscription on a monthly basis, or an annual subscription basis where it's recurring, or some could be just like one time thing, which they actually explained in the car booking sales examples as well. So average deal size is basically the size of the booking, the ticket item, the ticket price, which is basically average deal size would be the average of, how much sale did you make over average number of orders, over number of orders that you had. So you might be selling things for 10, 15, 20, $25, and then you four bookings for 10, 15, 20, and 25. So you average out to see what is your average, deal size like. And of course, that could be in millions too. Average time to close is how long does it take your sales cycle to end. So when you do reach out to the customer, when you do start your sales cycle, how long does it take for you to actually close a deal? So for example, if I'm selling something to I'm selling, for example, a car. So my sales cycle would not be a day, but if I am selling, let's say, an ice cream on the roadside, my sales cycle would be actually instant, right? Whether you want it right there or not. You don't say, oh, yeah, I like this ice cream, but I think I'm going to come 3 days from now and go and buy it. Like for the grocery store, it's like kind of instant. You see stuff there and you buy it right away. But if I am to make a call, let's say if I am to reach out to you to buy a house, for example, the sales cycle or the closing of that and time to close for that particular deal will not be instant. It'll take like a month or two, depending on, the procedure. First, I'll have to sell it to you, get you interested. Once you show your interest, you will, by the time you also accept it, will not be like instantly. I mean, there could be exceptions, but usually you will take some time to think about it, get some inspection done. So before you actually convert into a customer, into a potential, so for example, there's an open house for the house. All the prospects are called in to come into the open house and see the house, right? The house which is for sale. So that's where my sales cycle starts. From all the prospects, they come in, and then people say, okay, let us know how we can reach out to you and place a bid. That's conversion into a lead. Then in the leads, you say you got 10 leads, for example, 10 people who showed interest in, putting a bid for the house. Then you qualify leads by seeing, okay, how many of those potential buyers of the house are pre-approved for a loan if it's a mortgage property. So for that, then if so, maybe, 5 out of 10 of those would not be eligible to have a mortgage of that size or whatsoever. You go through that process and you qualify those leads. So out of those 10 potential people who wanted to place a bid, you further qualified them to see how many people can actually get the mortgage for the price that you're asking for. So those will be your qualified leads. Out of those 5 people, they will put their bids in, and let's say you choose one buyer who has the highest bidder or whatever the seller wants to sell it to. Out of those 5 people, you select one person who you're going to sell the house. Now the process of closing the deal will start, in the sense that property papers have to be signed. They have to be, property title has to exchange hands and change names and all that. So the whole process, by the time you get that money in the bank, in the seller's bank, is the total time from the open house to the getting that money for the house and title transfer and all that. That would be your sales cycle, time to close, basically. This could take, for consumer, it is kind of instant, but for when you do B2B, it takes a long time, sometimes, a year or two. It really depends on what industry you're in and who you're selling to, what are you selling to them, and so on and so forth. So they're just telling us to review some marketing um, concepts that we touched upon last time. Okay. Company's growth. Now we are actually focusing on the customer side of it. So one would be like the deal size. So how much a customer buys for, time to close, how long does it take to, for the customer to stay with us and stuff like that. But then the next thing is, does the customer come back? That is the retention of the customer. That is basically where you say, that helps you determine the lifetime value of the customer, right? We looked at the lifetime value formula, the concept basically, where you see how much a customer would bring in over the life of that customer being a customer of your company. So for that, you need to know how many people who do end up converting into your customers come back. And if they do come back, how often do they come back, and how do you track that, and how do you stop people from not coming back, in the sense that for example, Facebook is a platform where they have daily active users and monthly active users. So if Facebook sees that daily people are not coming on the platform daily, it will have to ramp up its efforts to make sure it's catering to those people and see what they need and why they're not coming back. Maybe there's another platform that they're more interested in, for example, Instagram. So those kind of companies would want to track the consumer interaction with your product and seeing how active the users are for a platform like Facebook. But other apps who are, let's say, let me see an example. Daily active and monthly active users are usually for apps, more social apps where you would want to go every day, multiple times a day, instead of apps, for example, purchasing something. For example, Amazon, the daily active users would be the same users who would come to Amazon daily. That might be a little less, since people might not be ordering something from Amazon on a daily basis. Although I suppose people have Amazon addiction these days. Guilty is charged here too. But then let me think of a very different example of a software that you do go to regularly but not daily. For example, pet grooming app, like Uber for pet grooming, right? If you want to get your pet groomed, you will not go on their app every day. You would go on their app every 2 weeks or a month or a quarter, depending on how frequently you get your pet groomed. And to go to that app, you will not be sitting on that app every day. So for that app, monthly active users would make more sense than daily active users, because their users do not have to be on their app to be daily, because their I would say, not the sales cycle, but I would say, the frequency of those customers buying from them is not on a daily basis. Whereas a social platform is something that people use daily. So daily active users for that kind of platform makes more sense. This is basically this is how these platforms see how many users are coming on a daily basis. If we have like a churn would be people not coming back. Monthly active users, daily users. The stickiness ratio is basically, it shows that how much people are sticking to your platform. And if you say, I have, let's say, 100,000 people one day on the platform, let's say YouTube, for example, and the next day I have 200,000 people. So and the third day I have only 10,000 people. So that is like, you will see how many people keep coming back on a daily basis. So, and on a monthly basis as well. And then you'll find the stickiness ratio as to how many people are daily versus monthly. That would give an idea. That metric, basically what it does is it assesses how much how often people are actually coming back on a long term basis, not just on a daily number. Like your daily active users for today would be very different from tomorrow, but the monthly active users would be a bigger, bigger picture as to long term how many people keep coming back, not just day to day. So that is the ratio, which is very um, relevant to the social networking sites like Facebook and, of course, gaming and all. And all these industries have these benchmarks, what has been seen. And then you can see from the industry benchmark what your app looks like. And then that's how you pitch to investors as to my app is very sticky, like my users are very loyal and they keep coming back to the platform. It's not like they just come one day or the next. They actually keep coming every day, and I have a very sticky app for that matter. So that's how you sell the investors as to how much potential of revenue is there for that app. If it's a social app, it's through advertising revenue. So that's the selling point of a social app, versus a gaming app could have in-app purchases and stuff like that. Then we have a question of stickiness. You have an Excel. It's a pretty straightforward formula. The higher the stickiness ratio is, basically a higher stickiness ratio means people are coming back consistently to your website or your platform. Churn rate is basically people, you see, when you say churn rate, that's something that how many customers that did come to you, became your actual paid customers, did you end up retaining at the end of the day. So if you had 50 customers that came to you in the first month of your business, next month, instead of those 50, only 20 customers from that came back. So your churn would be 20 out of 50. So churn rate would be customers at the beginning of the usage interval minus the customers at the end of the usage interval. That's the customers that you actually lost, divided by the customers at the beginning. So basically, if you had 50 users in the start, and then you had 25 users the next month, same users, but only 25% of them came back for a second purchase. So you have 50 at the start, 25 at the end. So you lost 25 customers. And what was your starting was basically 50. So you are at a 50% churn rate, which makes sense, right? You lost 50% of their customers to end up with 25 in the next month. And then you have different benchmarks for different kind of platforms as to how much, like what percentage of churn is okay to have, for the industry you're working in, of course, because that kind of gives investors a benchmark as to how are you, not just investors, management also, how are we doing compared to what happens normally in the industry, if it's up or down, and what can be done about it. So churn, we saw what churn was, what churn really means, losing the customers who don't come back for whatever reason. Software as a service is basically where a company sells software subscription, like Office 365 is a software as a service. And then subscriber-based service model. Actually, Office 365 is subscriber-based service model, and software as a service is basically Netflix, for example, or other streaming platforms. Okay, so growth and sales is more or less done. I mean, that was not. The concepts were pretty straightforward, and the formulas are pretty straightforward too. They're just plug and play kind of things, and they're all, I believe, in the PDF which is the resources PDF for the course, and they'll have all these formulas there. Hi Medic, Walaikum Assalam. Thank you for joining. Samir, you can follow this series, but this is actually a course on Udacity. So you might not follow completely because I'm just going through the concepts and not going through all the exercises. I'm kind of identifying a lot of exercises and what was going on, but I actually don't do all of them on screen here. Hi, Balbina. I hope I'm not butchering your name. How are you? Thank you for joining. Oh, hi, Jay. Hi, Harry Styles. How have you been? Balbina, are you from the course? Did you come here through the course, or did you just happen to stumble on our stream? Okay, so now let's go into the finance metrics. This had some confusion in terms of what margins and what expenses were taken in which category. So I'm actually gonna, while going through this, I'll write this on a piece of paper for myself for future reference, because coming from an accounting background, certain things make sense and certain things don't, but I'm gonna follow what they want since that's how they're doing it. Because as an accountant, you would understand that a lot of different frameworks in accounting itself have very different ways of treating certain expenses and revenues and so on and so forth. Like category can change up and down, like IFRS versus US GAAP and UK GAAP, or all those kind of frameworks can actually, it's okay to have different categories of the same expense in a different framework. So I'm just going to note down what they want so that I remember, and then I'll just use it that way. Okay, so finance metrics. This is to basically see how your revenues are doing compared to your costs. So you're not losing money while selling stuff. Like if your revenue is less than your costs, no matter how much you sell, you'll end up making loss, and with every sale, you'll magnify your loss. How your sales are trending against sales goals. Then again, the variance analysis of what your budget was like versus your actual. So you can forecast better for the next season. How are sale and marketing led metrics comparing against acquisitions? Okay. And they are correct. Entire graduate degrees, entire careers are on the finance side of it. And within finance, there is accounting and then finance. So within that also you have multiple careers. So they are correct. This is a very dense topic on its own. But let's see what they are touching upon and take it from there. So they're talking about variable costs and fixed costs. Variable costs would be something that would vary based on how much you sell. So that means how much you want to produce, or how much you would be buying raw materials for, or if you're reselling it. So let's say trading, you would be buying certain things and then selling it going forward, right? Like for example, people who are selling on Amazon, they might not be actually producing anything. They would be buying certain items from, let's say, China and selling it in the US. So all they're doing is their variable cost would be how much do they buy to sell. So they might buy only the amount of orders they get. So that's their variable cost. That's the cost of sale. That cost only incurs if you make that sale, and it's relevant in the sense that you buy the raw materials to produce based on how much you expect to sell. So that you can vary based on the activity of the business. But then certain other costs are fixed. For example, your rent. Your rent doesn't change based on how much you sell or you don't sell. Your office expenses, your car expenses, stuff like that's fixed for the business. That doesn't change based on how much how much sale you make. So cost of sales, which are directly expenses related directly to your sales, um, the sale items, like their cost of making, their cost of purchasing, their raw materials, their packaging, freight of the delivery, that's all directly related to the sales, and that's the cost of sale, which would be mostly your variable costs. There might be other variable costs that we would see once we go through this. So rent is a fixed cost. Cost of machinery is also fixed. Cost of raw materials will actually depend on how much you want to produce, and then you buy accordingly. So how much to produce would be linked to how much you expect to sell. So you would first budget how much to sell. Based on that sales, how much would you need to produce versus how much inventory you have, and then how much are you producing. That would dictate as to how much raw material you need to go out and buy. Labor to develop the product would be a variable cost, because that could be the labor who could be packaging your orders. So depending on how many orders you have, the labor cost would, vary based on that. Difference between finance and accounting. Accounting is actually just, you say, recording what has happened. Finance is not just recording, but actually forecasting as well. So forecasting or going out and raising funds for that. Accounting is actually an act of recording your business activities on a financial statement. Okay. Items and profit and loss statements. Revenue is basically the sale you make. So the money that you earn from selling products and services is your revenue. Cost of goods sold is the direct cost of developing that product or service. So your raw material cost to make that product or service, your labor costs to make that product or service, the packaging of each item that you sell, the freight costs of delivery of that product, and so on and so forth. Gross profit is basically what you're selling for and what your direct costs of these are, not your rent or other things, but directly related to that product. So if I'm selling a packet of potato chips, my raw material would be the packaging, the potatoes, the oil that I fry in, the seasonings, the labor who actually fries it, packages it, and packs it and delivers it. So those would be my direct costs. And out of the basic stuff, without having to set up an office or anything, without taking into account the machinery or anything like that, just how much does a packet of chips cost me in terms of the different items and the packaging and all that, that would be my cost of goods sold. Other than that, any other expense would then be either related to my selling, so that would be like salespeople salaries, general and admin expenses, which would be my rent, my office staff, my admin staff, my executive people salaries, and so on and so forth. Operating expenses are basically not related to direct manufacturing, your overheads basically. SG&A is basically your operating cost. One way of operating costs. I need to write this down so I'm sure I understand what categories they are putting it in, because we have to follow what they give here. So marketing is of course selling. Salaries of office staff will be general administrative. Salaries of sales commission is also selling. That makes sense. Supplies and consumer hardware would be general and admin. Some companies list total operating expenses separately, while others treat them as synonymous. So yeah, there you go. That note explains as to, it really depends on what you are following, what accounting system you're following. And even within accounting systems, like for example, IFRS gives you the leeway to do certain things certain way, but they say you just have to be consistent from year on year. You can't keep changing your categorization. As long as you've been using that categorization every year, you should be fine in a lot of things. So just stick with what they have told you. If you have read something somewhere else differently, follow this, because this is what they want you to do. Total operating expenses is sum of SGAs and operating expenses. Yes. Operating income is basically the profit that you end up earning. So sales, what you earn for that product minus what you actually made that product for, and then your other expenses to run the business as it is. So how much money did you end up making in the end? That's your net income. Let me also see what do we have on Slack? What kind of questions do we have? 7. Oh, well, Bina, I see your message on Slack. Yes, I will be doing lesson 8 after lesson 7. So there was a confusion on what costs go where here on Slack. Let me see, exercise 30. Yes. Why is laptop and a total operating expense instead of an SG&A? So see, total operating expenses is SG&A and other operating expenses. So SG&A is part of total operating expenses, right? Because over here they identify computer hardware and supplies as SG&A, but total operating expenses is SG&A and operating expenses, both of these. So all your non-direct expenses, which does not come in cost of sale, is your total operating expenses, which can be further categorized into operating expenses and SG&A. I know these terms are very similar sounding. We could have had better names for sure. So for a smoothie company, you would say amount generated from selling the units would of course be your revenue, your income, and then cost of buying fruits and vegetables, which directly go into the smoothie, is your direct cost of that sale. So that would be your cost of sales, right? Rent for the shop is your general operating expense, because if you see here, rent is here. Rent is an operating expense. Cost of bottles and straws. So this is directly related to the actual smoothie you're selling, because that's the packaging of the smoothie, right? So that would be cost of sales as well. Cost of furniture and computer. Computer and furniture comes under SG&A. So the options did not have SG&A versus other operating expenses. It had total operating expenses, so that kind of covers it. Sorry, it had SG&A. Sorry, my mistake. It has SG&A, and which actually is in line with what they have shown over here. Question 2 is where people had issues, I think. Gross profit, cost of sales, SG&A, total operating expenses, and operating income. Okay. Oh, wait. We had some resources down here. So just looking at the solution directly, they have the revenue, cost of goods sold, and they have fruits and vegetables, smoothie cups and straws, cost of cash machine. Then the gross profit is there. SG&A has rent, salary, utilities, and cost of sales and marketing. That's your total operating expense. So I would actually, for my particular purpose, I would actually see how they've categorized it over here and then run with that instead of figuring out why the laptop is after the total operating expenses and not before that in SG&A and stuff like that, because that is confusing. I would actually run with this. These things are a little confusing in the sense that they've been changing category from here to there. I would actually take this as my benchmark because the exercise and everything is based on this, and I would run with that. I don't think this would be such a big issue. It would be one question and part of one question. So I wouldn't worry much about these things, which are problematic in the course. I agree with that. Even some of the things in lesson 8 are also problematic, where there are issues in the sense that there are mistakes. Mistakes related to those can be found on Tech Help channel in Slack, where people have suggested the correct they've actually tried to correct what was the possible problem. Gross margin. Okay, gross margin is basically gross profit divided by total revenue. That is the percentage of what you end up making from a direct sale, not your net amount of money in the bank, but if you are selling something for $10 and it costs you directly just for the packaging and the raw materials and the labor to make that to be $5, you are earning $5 on that product. Sell it for 10, make it like get that actual package for 5, you actually end up making 50% of your money because you make it for 5 and sell it for 10. And from that 5 that you make, you have to take out your other business expenses. So gross margin gives you an idea of, how much are you selling the core product for what it takes you to make it. So if you were in trading and you are reselling stuff, so if you take, let's say, for example, the same example we took last time, somebody's selling on Amazon and they're ordering the product from China and just shipping it to the US customers. So they're not making anything. So what they'll do is they'll see how much do they buy it for and how much are they selling it for, and just the shipping expenses they have to incur on top of the purchase price that they have to pay to the Chinese suppliers. So their gross profit would be the sale that they're making in the US minus the cost of the product that they had to pay to the supplier in China, and also the freight expenses that they paid to get the stuff in the US and also ship it to the actual customer. Gross margin would give you that profit as to how much, top line basis, how much are you making on each particular product or your total sale. That actually, as the question also suggests, it tells you how much of the money is left for you to cover your other operating expenses like rent and other business expenses for that matter. If you don't make profit, if your gross profit is 0, you will end up in a loss overall because you won't have your other operating expenses. You won't have money to pay for those. So that's like a base level thing that you should be earning at least gross profit, like some of it, so that you can cover your other operating, non-direct expenses for that matter. I know that is a wrong term to use. Direct and non-direct have a total different meaning. Okay, gross margin. Margin in percentage is just gross profit divided by total sales, which is total sales minus cost of sales divided by total sales would give you gross profit margin. Fixed costs are certain costs that do not change with your production or sales levels. Variable costs do. There can be certain variable costs which could be cost of sales, but also you can say operating expenses can also be variable in some nature. Fixed cost would be something like rent. Doesn't make a difference. It only changes if you change the size of the facility you're in. So no matter how much revenue you make, you don't make fixed costs are fixed. Variable costs could be either the raw material that is related to the cost of sale directly. But another variable cost would be the electricity that you use in production. Um, not in production, in you could say, so the packaging of the product is a variable cost, that's direct cost of sale. But electricity, which is used for production and for our office and all that, and it's lump sum, you could say that would be very variable on based on how much production you did. So that's a variable cost, but that might not be taken into cost of sales. So if you are doing cost of sale and operating expenses, that's one categorization that goes together. Then the other one is total fixed versus variable. What you get from cost of sales and operating expenses is gross profit and net profit. So sales minus cost of sales is gross profit, minus operating expenses is your net profit. From sales, you minus variable costs, you get contribution margin, minus fixed costs, you get net income. So those are the two parallel sides. We don't mix them. Contribution margin just says that sales minus variable costs, something that you can control based on how much sales you're having, like how much activity you're having, and then the fixed costs that they will be there no matter what. Whether they are cost of sales, whether they're operating, doesn't matter. So the categorization is different. One is cost of sales and operating, one is variable and fixed. And the margins that they both give you are separate. One would give you gross profit and net profit, and the other would give you contribution and net profit. I mean, net profit should be the same no matter how you categorize the expenses, right? Because your sales is the same, your total costs are the same, your net profit should be the same. The only difference is how we categorize the costs getting from sales to the profit. I hope this helps and I'm not confusing you guys. So just for a recap, revenue minus cost of sale is your gross profit, minus all your total operating expenses is your net profit. On the other hand, we have revenue minus your variable costs give you contribution margin, and minus fixed costs give you net profit. Then they're recapping churn rate. We covered that. We covered contribution margin, gross margin, net profit, gross profit, stickiness ratio. Cost per acquisition was from our previous session, which is basically the total cost of marketing plus the salesperson's salary divided by the number of actual customers. That's cost per acquisition, cost on top, and number of customers acquired at the bottom. Lifetime value would be the value that the customer would bring in terms of how much sale they would do, how much would they purchase from your company over the life of that customer. Distribution of data. I didn't even remember this was in this lesson. I thought that was statistics, the box plots. Oh, they're using this to present our financial data in terms of conversion rates. Conversion rates by region. What is that? So what they're telling us is basically they did lesson 1 and 2 were on statistics of what central tendencies are, and then we learned about different metrics that we use in business, in finance, in marketing, and then use those, like present those metrics using those statistics in terms of different plots and what they mean, how the central tendency can come into play, and so on and so forth. So that's the summary end of it. Let me know if you guys have any particular questions for this part of the session, the lesson. So this is the PDF. This has been shared on the Slack channel as a PDF as well. So if you guys are having trouble finding this here, you can go download it from there. So they have all the formulas there. So I would keep this sheet. And what I would do is, okay, so they say, okay, this is what it says over here. So this is what we have to follow. So yeah, get this, make sure you have this sheet printed out before the assessment. I guess with that, we are done with lesson number 7. Let me just open the chat and see if you guys have any particular questions. Correct pronunciation, I'm glad. Okay, so maybe you're interested in business. Well, this is what business looks like. This is like an overarching theme of what it is, and then you can select where you want to go, because within marketing, there are a lot of careers. Within the growth things that we spoke about have a lot of careers. Within the finance part, there are a lot of careers. So yeah. With that, I think that's the end of that. Let me see if there are any questions on Slack still unanswered. Exercise 30. We looked at that. We covered marketing last time. So I guess we're done with this. If you guys still have any questions relating to this, let me know. Either leave it in the chat on the video, or put it in the Slack channel, and I'll see how I can help. Well, I guess that's it for this lesson. Let's target lesson 8 next time, which seems to be very problematic, not because it's difficult, but because it's explained in a very weird way. Honestly, for me, coming from the finance side, we've been doing this at work a lot, but then the way it was explained was not so great. If I had not known this beforehand, there was no way I would have understood what they were talking about. So yeah, I hope I can help you guys out there, and maybe try to explain certain things that would make more sense out of what they're trying to tell you. Okay guys, with that, let's end the stream here. Well, I guess that's it for the stream for today. Thank you for joining in. Those of you who could not join in, you guys can always see a replay of this to see where we touched upon and certain, expanding upon certain ideas, certain concepts. And let me know in the comments as to whether it made sense, or if you have further questions, or you could put those questions on the Slack channel as well. Either would work. So guys, with that, this brings us to the end of our session. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys hope you guys found this helpful in some way or the other. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next lesson number 8. I will be scheduling that stream and putting it on the Slack channel as well for you to follow. With that, thank you for coming and learning with me, and I hope you guys get done what you intend to and some more. Good luck for the rest of the lessons and the assessment, and I'll see you next time. Bye.